Deion Sanders doesn't snap often, but when he does, the sports world stops. After Rex Ryan's disrespectful jab at Shedeur Sanders went viral, Deion broke his silence in the most Coach Prime way possible, not with anger, but with precision. His social media post, a single emoji, hit harder than any statement ESPN could release. It was a warning shot disguised as calm, a father's way of saying, "We see you." The backlash that followed reshaped sports media overnight.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Ryan was suspended. ESPN was forced into damage control. And suddenly, Shedeur's poise under fire became the story, not the insult. This wasn't just about defending a son. It was about demanding a new level of respect in a culture too used to crossing the line. The word embarrassment changed everything. When Rex Ryan said it on live TV with zero hesitation, it didn't just land as a controversial sports take. It hit like a personal attack. Because when you go on national television and call a rookie quarterback an embarrassment, you're not breaking down gameplay. You're not offering analysis. You're trying to humiliate someone. Period. That someone happened to be Shedeur Sanders. And for anyone paying attention, it was clear that this wasn't about football. It was about power, tone, and a long history of media figures stepping over the line under the guise of just being honest. The fallout was instant. Rex Ryan's comments sparked backlash from fans, fellow analysts, athletes, and even ESPN executives, who clearly realized the line had been crossed. And crossed hard. ESPN didn't wait for the internet to make it worse. They stepped in fast with a 1-week suspension and made Ryan give an on-air apology. But let's be honest, the apology didn't fix the damage. It wasn't just the word he used, it was the intent behind it. You don't accidentally call someone an embarrassment. Especially not someone like Shedeur, who's already under a microscope because of who his father is. Rex didn't slip. He swung. And people weren't buying the spin. The reaction wasn't split. It wasn't one of those agree to disagree moments. It was a collective, nope. Because this wasn't just about disrespect, it was about control. About who gets to say what, and who's expected to take it. But Shedeur Sanders didn't respond the way people expected. He didn't rant. He didn't clap back online. He didn't sit down for a tell-all interview to clear the air. Instead, he did something no one saw coming. He shut up. Completely. At his next press conference, Shedeur mouthed every answer. No words. No sound. Just silent responses to every question, while the room watched in stunned silence of their own. That moment? It changed the entire conversation. Because that wasn't avoidance. That was a calculated, composed, deliberate statement. You don't get to provoke me into performing for you. Shedeur flipped the power dynamic on its head. And people felt it. The clip went viral not because he said something wild, but because he didn't. His silence became the headline. And in that silence, he made more of a statement than any angry rebuttal ever could. It was a protest without signs. A mic drop without a word. And the Sanders family didn't stop there. Soon after, Shedeur's mother, Pilar Sanders, posted to Instagram. And unlike her son, she did speak, and she did so with heat. Her message was clear. You don't get to come for my son and walk away clean. She called out the negativity. She addressed the disrespect. She named the envy that often hides behind honest critique. And she made it plain. This wasn't just commentary gone wrong. This was personal. And it crossed a line. It wasn't a PR-crafted post. It wasn't filtered or curated for sponsors. It was raw, protective, and from the heart of a mother who's had to watch her son get dragged, not for how he plays, but for who he is. And here's what made it all resonate. Shedeur, Pilar, and Deion Sanders didn't try to orchestrate some coordinated family response. They didn't spin it into a campaign. They didn't try to manufacture sympathy. They just responded like themselves. Shedeur with quiet resistance. Pilar with emotional fire. And Deion? Deion didn't say a word. He posted a single emoji on social media and then walked away. And somehow, That emoji carried the most weight of all. Because when you're Deion Sanders, Hall of Famer, coach, legend, and father, you don't need to talk a lot to make a statement. One symbol from him said it all. I'm standing with my son, and I'm not entertaining the noise. It was a reminder that not every punch deserves a swing back. Some just deserve silence and focus. Together, the Sanders family delivered 3 completely different responses. And all of them worked. Shedeur showed restraint. Pilar showed strength. Deion showed clarity. And in doing so, they exposed the imbalance in how athletes are treated and how media personalities are allowed to behave. Because what Rex Ryan did wasn't just a slip-up. It was a moment of reckless commentary that wasn't rooted in accountability or insight. It was rooted in entitlement. The kind that says, I can say what I want, how I want, and nobody's going to check me. But this time, he got checked. The suspension from ESPN wasn't just about damage control. It was about setting a precedent. That even if you've been in the business for years, even if you've coached in the NFL, even if your reputation is built on telling it like it is, you're still responsible for your words. The landscape has changed. Audiences have changed. Athletes aren't just taking criticism anymore. They're owning their stories. And if the media doesn't evolve with that, they're going to get left behind. Shedeur Sanders didn't win people over with a highlight reel. He won them over by standing still. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. Because he didn't need to. That silent press conference said, you're not going to bait me. You're not going to define me. And you're definitely not going to break me. And the impact went far beyond sports. It touched on how public figures use their platforms, how families defend their own, how media companies decide what's acceptable in the name of ratings. It was about the line between free speech and accountability, between critique and cruelty, between commentary and disrespect. And the fact that Shedeur didn't flinch, that he carried himself with the kind of composure that some professionals still haven't figured out, sent a clear message. Legacy isn't about who talks the most. It's about how you handle the moments designed to break you. And Shedeur handled it better than anyone could have expected. So what does this mean for the future? For one, analysts like Rex Ryan are going to have to adapt or get replaced. Because fans aren't tolerating this kind of language anymore. They're not interested in angry rants that go too far. They want respect. They want fairness. They want responsible commentary. And for athletes, this moment just gave them a blueprint. It proved that you don't need to shout to take control of your narrative. That silence can be a statement. That dignity always hits harder than drama. This wasn't just a media firestorm. It was a cultural shift. And it was led by a rookie quarterback who knew the value of saying nothing. So what do you think? Was ESPN's suspension enough? Should Rex Ryan have been pulled off air longer? And did Shedeur Sanders just set the new standard for how athletes should respond to disrespect? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're into real moments like this, where sports, family, legacy, and media collide, go ahead and subscribe. Because this isn't just about football. This is about power, dignity, and knowing when to speak, and when to let the silence do it for you. And let's not pretend this was a one-day scandal. No, this wasn't one of those forgettable hot takes that fades after a trending hashtag dies. This stuck. The word embarrassment didn't just bounce around Twitter. It hit like a slap across the face of sports culture. And it wasn't just about Shedeur Sanders. It was about every young athlete being told they're not enough. About how the media still thinks it can control the narrative without consequence. Rex Ryan thought he was just doing his job. He thought he was delivering the truth. But the second he stepped outside the bounds of professional critique and into the realm of personal degradation, he handed the spotlight to someone else. Not Shedeur, not Pilar, not even Deion. The spotlight moved to the moment itself, the defining line between the old way of doing things and the new way forward. And Shedeur? He didn't chase that spotlight. He didn't reach for sympathy or spin his silence into a headline. He simply took a seat, mouthed his answers, and left the world to figure out what just happened. That kind of composure doesn't come from nowhere. That kind of strength isn't an accident. It's built. It's passed down. It's lived in. And when you carry a name like Sanders, you're not just playing football. You're managing expectation, legacy, and public pressure every single day. People were quick to forget that Shedeur Sanders is a rookie, a young quarterback on one of the most scrutinized rosters in the NFL, living under the weight of a Hall of Fame father's shadow. And still, he handled a national media storm more maturely than the man who caused it. Let's break that down. Rex Ryan is a former NFL head coach, a longtime ESPN analyst, a grown man with decades in the industry. And yet he got benched like a rookie, suspended for crossing a line he should have known better than to touch. If anyone should understand the pressure of the NFL spotlight, it's him. So why the hostility? Was it about Shedeur's play? Because if we're being honest, plenty of rookie QBs struggle. That comes with the territory. That's football. What doesn't come with the territory is being humiliated on air by a veteran analyst in a segment that had more heat than substance. No stats. No tape breakdown. Just a loaded insult tossed out like it was casual observation. And that's where the sports media world needs to check itself. Because there's a difference between calling it like it is and straight-up disrespect. You can't pretend to care about mental health and professionalism in sports, and then cheer when someone gets ripped to shreds over nothing more than a name and a headline. You can't say you support young talent, and then give a pass to someone who undermines that talent just to fill airtime. Rex Ryan's comment wasn't just unprofessional, it was lazy. It required zero analysis. It offered no insight. It was pure provocation, and it backfired. Because instead of damaging Shedeur's image, it exposed the rot in sports commentary. It exposed how some media figures still think outrage equals relevance. And it showed just how out of touch that mindset is in 2025. What the Sanders family did was flip the script. They didn't whine. They didn't threaten lawsuits. They didn't call for boycotts. They responded the way people with nothing to prove respond, with control. Shedeur used his platform without speaking a word. Pilar lit up social media without asking for permission. And Deion? He reminded the world why his silence is scarier than most people's noise. That emoji? It wasn't just a post. It was a signal. A signal that the Sanders family doesn't need to shout. They already have the room. And that's the shift that this moment captured. The transition from the era of shock value wins to the era of respect must be earned. Because let's be real, people are tired. Tired of seeing young athletes picked apart for existing. Tired of watching grown men try to stay relevant by throwing punches at people half their age. Tired of networks hiding behind freedom of speech when they're really just chasing views. What this moment did, intentionally or not, was hold a mirror up to the entire sports media machine. And the reflection? It wasn't pretty. But for once, the people on the receiving end didn't just survive the moment. They owned it. This wasn't damage control. It was legacy preservation. Shedeur didn't just protect himself. He elevated the expectations. He showed that maturity isn't about saying the right thing. It's about knowing when not to speak at all. And in a world full of overreactions, hot takes, and media-fueled beefs, that kind of discipline is rare and powerful. Think about what would have happened if Shedeur had fired back. If he'd taken to social media to drag Rex. If he'd fed the controversy with rage or sarcasm. It would have given Rex exactly what he wanted. Engagement. A back and forth. A reason to stay in the news cycle. But Shedeur gave him nothing. Not 1 ounce of energy. And in doing so, he took everything. He took control. He took dignity. He took the moral high ground. And he stood there while the media fumbled its response. The only people who looked composed in that moment were the ones who had every reason to lash out. And didn't. And that's what legacy looks like in 2025. It's not just about winning on the field. It's about knowing how to navigate the chaos off of it. It's about protecting your name when someone tries to stain it for clicks. It's about showing the next generation that you don't have to yell to be heard. So where does this leave the industry? Analysts are going to have to evolve. The age of shock first, empathy later commentary is dying out. Because fans are demanding better. Athletes are demanding better. Families are demanding better. And when the people you're criticizing start to outclass you in every response, that's when it's time to ask if maybe you are the embarrassment. Let's not sugarcoat it. Rex Ryan's comment will follow him. Not just because it was harsh, but because it was so obviously wrong. And when the response from the Sanders family is studied in classrooms, in media training seminars, in coaching sessions about how to handle controversy, Rex will be the footnote. Shedeur will be the blueprint. Because this was never just about a quarterback. It was about media culture, about respect, about family, about silence as resistance, about knowing who you are when someone tries to tell the world you're something else. And Shedeur Sanders passed that test with a level of maturity that most people only reach after years of PR coaching. He didn't spin. He didn't flinch. He just stayed silent and let the world see what real composure looks like. It forced everyone, networks, fans, players, even rival analysts, to stop and ask, what are we doing? What are we really allowing when someone like Rex Ryan, sitting on a major ESPN platform, uses that space to casually label a young quarterback, a rookie, no less an embarrassment? Not a disappointment. Not needs work. Embarrassment. A word that's loaded, mean-spirited, meant to cut deep and leave a mark. And sure, sports media has always had its provocateurs. People who make careers by saying the most outrageous thing possible. But this time, the audience didn't cheer. They didn't laugh. They didn't rush to defend free speech. They looked at Rex Ryan, a man who's been around long enough to know better, and said, that's not it. Because this wasn't just about Shedeur Sanders the athlete. This was about what he represents. A young black quarterback with a famous last name, stepping into the NFL with the entire world watching, trying to make his own name, trying to navigate legacy and performance at the same time. He's not just playing the game, he's living the pressure. And for someone like Rex Ryan to take aim at that, to minimize all that effort into one degrading word, it was ugly, and people felt it. But what made this story cut deeper, what gave it legs, what made it linger, wasn't just what was said. It was how Shedeur chose to respond. Let's go back to that press conference. The room was tense. The media waiting. The fans watching. Everyone expecting a reaction. Maybe even hoping for one. A fiery quote. A defensive speech. Anything they could dissect and replay. But Shedeur sat down, looked straight ahead, and said absolutely nothing. Instead, he mouthed his answers to every single question. Not to be difficult. Not to be disrespectful. But because he knew anything he said would be twisted, weaponized, used to keep the controversy alive. So he shut it down, on his own terms, with a kind of clarity and maturity that was unsettling. Because when someone refuses to perform for the cameras, refuses to feed the machine, refuses to engage, it's disarming. The press conference wasn't just awkward. It was effective. It stopped people in their tracks. And then came Pilar. She didn't mince words. She didn't try to smooth things over. She didn't play by the rules. She just opened up and let the fire out. Her Instagram post was pure heat. Not calculated. Not polished. Just truth. She spoke like a mother. A woman who has watched her son work, grow, lead, and then get blindsided by a man who doesn't even know him. She didn't just call out the comment. She called out the energy behind it. The way media sometimes talks about young black athletes with an edge that's sharper than necessary. The way envy can wear the mask of commentary. The way a single moment can threaten to reshape public perception. Unless you fight back. And fight back she did. But here's the difference. Pilar didn't rant for attention. She didn't make herself the center. She made it about respect. She made it about what every parent wants when their child is being mistreated. Accountability. And while she burned hot, Deion stayed cool. No quotes. No interviews. No headlines. Just one emoji. And that's the brilliance of it. Because Deion Sanders knows what attention does. He is attention. He built a career on knowing exactly how to use the spotlight. So when he chose to stay mostly silent, when he posted a single emoji and left it there, that wasn't avoidance. That was control. He let his son own the moment. He let Pilar speak her truth. And he made it crystal clear, we don't need to scream. Our silence is louder than your noise. The Sanders family didn't flinch. They didn't splinter. They didn't scramble to clean up the mess. They stood together, each with their own voice, or lack thereof, and let the world draw its own conclusion. And that conclusion was obvious. You don't mess with this family. Meanwhile, ESPN was left to handle the fallout. Their 1-week suspension of Rex Ryan? It was necessary. But let's not kid ourselves. It was also self-preservation. A network trying to protect its brand while walking the tightrope of free speech and corporate responsibility. But even with the apology, the damage was done. Because the audience saw something real. They saw an athlete attacked, and a family rise to meet the moment with dignity. This was about more than punishment. It was about precedent. And that's what makes this incident a turning point. Because the shift isn't coming, it's already here. Athletes are no longer expected to take whatever is thrown at them just because someone with a mic decides they're fair game. They don't have to roll with it. They don't have to feed into it. They can reclaim the moment. They can shut it down without a single word. Shedeur Sanders just proved that. He showed what it looks like to lead with silence. To trust that his actions and his restraint would do all the talking. And it worked. He didn't win by defending himself. He won by not needing to. And it sent a message, not just to Rex Ryan, but to the entire industry. The rules have changed. You can't treat athletes like characters in a reality show anymore. You can't insult them for ratings and expect them to play along. You can't cross personal lines and call it just part of the job. Because when the cameras are off, these athletes go home to their families. To people like Pilar. To fathers like Deion. And when you disrespect one, you're disrespecting all of them. So what now? Does Rex Ryan recover from this? Probably. He's a no-name. He'll lay low, come back with some new takes, and keep pushing forward. That's how it works. But his reputation? That's changed. Because from now on, when people hear his name, they won't just think about his time as a coach or his ESPN segments. They'll think about this. About how he picked a fight he didn't need to, and got outclassed at every turn. By a 21-year-old who said absolutely nothing. So if you're still asking who won this moment, it wasn't close. Shedeur kept his integrity. Pilar said what needed to be said. And Deion showed that silence, when rooted in strength, can be the loudest response of all. This wasn't just a clapback. It was a shift. A cultural checkpoint. A reminder that respect isn't optional, and legacy isn't built through noise. It's built through how you handle the noise. And Shedeur Sanders? He handled it like someone who already knows the game, on and off the field. So let's talk. Was ESPN's suspension of Rex Ryan long enough? Should he have been held to a higher standard? And what did you take away from Shedeur's decision to stay silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're here for the real breakdowns, the mess, the fallout, the moments that actually matter, go ahead and subscribe. Because the games may be played on Sundays, but the real drama, that unfolds long after the final whistle.